Hi, my name is Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the Representation of People Act 1983 and its implications for the reporting media can and can't lawfully do, and indeed the rest of us, during a general election campaign. But first, if you'd like to receive notifications for my upcoming content, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon next to it. Now, when you consider the very rough and tumble of fake news and deliberate lies that infect British politics, you could be forgiven for thinking there are no rules, that election campaigns are a sort of Wild West. After all, when someone tried to take Boris Johnson to court for deliberately lying to the public about the false Brexit bus message, it was quickly thrown out by the judge on the basis that Boris Johnson can lie his little back heart out. As long as he doesn't do it in court, it's perfectly legal. However, there are rules and even legislation governing a modicum of respectability during election campaigns. The rules are contained in the Representation of the People Act 1983. So if you'd like to read through it yourself, have a look. It's quite big. It's quite long. Now, the reason for going through these aspects of the law are twofold. One, it may be instructive and indeed interesting to you all. Indeed, I hope it is. But two, most importantly, in these time of brazen lawmakers when it comes to politics, when I say lawmakers, I mean lawbreakers, but they are lawmakers, MPs, you may see someone committing one of these offences and have been otherwise unaware that it was unlawful. If you do, feel free to report them to the police post haste. Lock them all up. There are actually quite a lot, so I'll confine myself to the ones most likely to crop up given the known behaviour of various players in this general election. Now, bear in mind, I'm not a legal expert, and most of these provisions haven't actually been prosecuted because people haven't fallen foul of them, so I'll try and just stick to the facts as known. But section 92 is a weird one. I need to get this one out of the way first. It's like one of those that I think to myself, but that's definitely going to be broken, and yet I can't see how anything could be done. Basically states that it is unlawful to broadcast anything designed to influence the election from outside of the UK, with a few exceptions. So if Donald Trump gives an address from the US that is shown in the UK supporting Boris Johnson, I don't think it means we can go and arrest Donald Trump. But on to more understandable parts of the legislation, and section 97 regards disturbing public meetings. Not that the meetings themselves are disturbing, but you disturbing them. So obviously, during an election campaign, candidates and their supporters will wish to hold meetings. And incidentally, if you are a candidate and you wish to hold a public meeting, there are places you are allowed free use of, like schools and things like that, any sort of suitable meeting place. So, you know, of this, and we can go along as members of the public and listen to what they have to say. Now, if you attend such a public meeting and deliberately cause a nuisance or incite others to act in a disorderly way with the purpose of preventing the meeting from carrying out its business, you will be committing an offence. So troublemakers can't just turn up to public meetings of their political opponents and frustrate the proceedings, otherwise they'll be arrested. There are some people who are simply not permitted to canvass during an election as well, including police officers in section 100. Now, section 106 is probably the spiciest. It is unlawful for anyone, me included, anyone at all, to publish any false statement of fact in relation to any candidate's personal character or conduct. Now, as with any false statements, you do get a bit of a pass if you can demonstrate that you had good reason for making such an allegation. But saying that you heard it from some guy down the pub probably isn't going to cut it in court. So this means that any Corbynistas out there complaining about anyone at all making what they consider false statements regarding the Grand Jeremy himself could report it to the police. It really is a knowingly false statement. You know, if it is, then they'll be arrested, charged and prosecuted. Depending on which sections they fall foul of, that obviously determines the potential sentence. I can't say what the punishment would be. Note that it does only relate to character and conduct. So accusing Jeremy Corbyn of being a terrorist without good reason means you are breaking the law. Saying that he's going to cost us over £1 trillion gazillion, oh, that's fine. So expect the Tories to keep plugging that one. Actually, thinking about it, as it's character or conduct, I wonder if it's illegal to refer to Boris Johnson as an honest man. Surely there's no reasonable grounds for making such a statement about him. You can't possibly say that you really believe he is honest. maybe it's worth reporting to the police any minister or Conservative campaigner who tries to say so. It's also illegal to claim that a particular candidate has withdrawn. Now, this little trick would be intended to persuade people to not bother searching for their name on the ballot paper, or even just not turn up at all and vote for someone else, or not vote for anyone. Section 107 makes it an offence to induce someone to withdraw from an election. I'm not sure Johnson's promise of a peerage for Farage counts, however. I think the candidate has to be registered and then withdraw, as opposed to simply not register in the first place. I mean, most of us don't register in the first place. Section 109 prohibits the hiring of special advertising spaces to display your campaign posters. So you could pay for a campaign poster to be put up in like a normal advertising space, like a billboard, but not on the side of a building that wouldn't normally be used for that purpose. And I'll remind people that there's no legal distinction between different types of people here. This law doesn't just apply to politicians or their paid strategists or aides or campaign managers. It applies to everyone, even someone acting independently. Note that it doesn't stop someone posting up a big campaign poster on the side of their house for free. It just mustn't be done for payment. Section 110 concerns election publications like leaflets. So they all have to contain the names and addresses of the printer, the promoter, and the person who ordered the publications, if that's not the promoter. It further adds that if the material is just a single sheet, that information has to be on the face of the document, presumably to stop someone just sneaking it on the back and hoping it doesn't get read. This is to stop one party making up fake leaflets, supposedly from another party, in order to discredit them. This has been attempted before, and the person responsible was prosecuted. Section 111. This makes it unlawful to employ someone to canvass on behalf of a candidate in an election. I have to admit, this one surprised me a little. After all, politicians do have election agents, which is fine, and strategists who are all paid, but I guess they're not allowed to go door-to-door knocking, and it's all fine. I didn't really realise that. But if someone were employed specifically to canvass on behalf of a candidate, then both the employer and the canvasser would be breaking the law, and they would both be prosecuted. Section 113 is interesting. It's on bribery. But actually what I found interesting was there's a typo on the first line. I'll have to report it. I don't actually know how you report typos on legislation. It says, is guilty or bribery, when it should be guilty of bribery. And at first, of course, I thought to myself, well, maybe a bit of the F's rubbed off, but the R did look exactly the same as R's where R's should be. I found a typo. But anyway, on to the bribery, which should be much more exciting than finding a typo. Of all the obvious breaches of electoral law, this one will surely definitely go on and definitely go unpunished. Of course there will be bribery. But the legislation is fairly clear on what it means by bribery, which is not necessarily as exhaustive a list as you and I may expect using the term. Essentially, you can't buy someone's vote or offer to pay them for not voting. That's it. It doesn't sadly cover false promises of doing up hospitals in marginal constituencies by the government, or promising my principal that he's going to get some extra money. He thinks Boris Johnson's brilliant. Section 114 is essentially the same thing, but it involves bribing someone rather than with payment, with food, drink or entertainment. So no rock concerts with a message to vote for a particular candidate, I suppose, there. Section 115 concerns the use of threats of force or violence, to determine someone's vote or prevent them from voting. Now, on this point, I wondered if a certain article by Rod Liddell in The Spectator earlier this month might fall foul. Now, The Spectator, for those who are unfamiliar with it, is a newspaper, if we can call it that, where Boris Johnson actually cut his teeth as a much younger journalist by making up lies about the EU. It's his job to make up lies about the EU. Not a respectable paper, as you can imagine. Now, in this article, Liddell was urging parents to stop their university-age children from voting. He suggested various methods for this, including bribing them with money, an offence under Section 113, as we've just discovered, giving them some strong drugs to knock them out, drugging them against their will, or even physically locking them in a room from which they couldn't get out on polling day. All sorts of offences there. Now, I'll put a link to it in the description below. I'll warn you that although You could read it without paying anything. It is sort of behind a paywall. You have to sort of sign onto account. It really doesn't want you reading it otherwise. It's one of those things where you can get a month free. I'll leave it up to you if you want to read it. But there is the link. So those are some of the potentially pertinent offences which may be committed by people during this general election campaign. I hope you found the video instructive and interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, please. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.